Another edition of Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. We got ourselves a very special episode of the Aaron Torres Pod for you here because college football is coming. We actually have some awesome announcements in the coming weeks. I will give them to you, in a couple days. But today, very special guest, the best guest you can have this time of year. That is because in just one moment, Phil Steele of Phil Steele Magazine joins us. Okay, so listen, if you know anything about college football, Phil Steele is basically the godfather. Okay, he's been doing Phil Steele Magazine, I think he said 31 years. And this isn't the normal preseason magazine. He talks personally to every single Division I FBS head coach. 300 plus pages. This guy knows more about college football than probably anybody on planet Earth. And he joins the Aaron Torres Pod to talk about all sorts of interesting things, teams that are overrated, teams that are underrated, how he puts together his rankings, the impact of schedules, the impact of the transfer portal. We talk Bama, we talk Colorado, we talk UConn. A lot of Phil Steele. It's going to be awesome. By the way, one quick caveat. We did talk quite a bit about Oklahoma. I am recording this intro in the midst of John Mateer Venmo Gate. So I am going to assume that right now nothing happens there. John Mateer has denied any wrongdoing. Oklahoma has said there is no active investigation into him. So if something changes, keep that in mind as you watch this video. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. On YouTube, new clips and videos going up every single day. We really do appreciate your support. Also, if you listen on podcasts, make sure to subscribe, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We really do appreciate your support. You know who else to support? We appreciate the support of our friends. We appreciate the support of our partners. We appreciate the support of Callie Puffs and CalliePuffs.com. Okay, so I've told you all about Callie Puffs, but family-owned company not far from where I live. Joey, the founder of Callie Puffs, guy like you and I, watches football, hangs out on the couch. One day he was watching football. He said, you know what? I need a snack that's both healthy but delicious, something I'm going to love, something my kids are going to love. He came up with Callie Puffs. This is the alternative to the crap in your grocery aisle. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients, but they taste freaking delicious. Again, the alternative. You don't need the Doritos. You don't need the Fritos. You need Callie Puffs for your tailgate. But if you're on the fence, do I try Callie Puffs? Do I not? Can I offer you, how about this, a promo code for listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod? This is all you got to do. All you got to do is go to CalliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, CalliePuffs.com. Use promo code Torres, and you get 15% off your purchase. CalliePuffs.com, promo code Torres, you get 15% off your purchase. Try them out for yourself. You're going to like them. You're going to get them for your tailgate. They're healthy. They're delicious. Callie Puffs and CalliePuffs.com. We appreciate their support. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. When we do, the Godfather, Phil Steele, here to talk about all things college football heading into this season. All right, joining me via Zoom, frankly, a gentleman that needs no introduction, especially this time of year. You've read his magazine, you know his magazine, and he is one of the leading voices in what is one of the best sports here on planet Earth. Phil Steele of PhilSteele.com and Phil Steele Magazine. My friend, how are you today? Have you been able to take like a nap or two since the magazine has come out, or is it just full speed ahead right into week 0?
Oh, no, the summer is definitely my fun time. I'm cutting it down to maybe 50 hours a week just doing a bunch of TV and radio shows. So it's definitely my fun time of the year. No deadlines like there is during the 7 months of the magazine or during football season when I'm trying to keep track of 65 games each week. So, yeah, it's definitely enjoyable right now.
That's fantastic. I've had you on before, but I want to get to all sorts of football stuff, but I would love for you just briefly just to take the audience behind the process of the magazine. I think anyone who has read this, hundreds of pages, there is nothing like it in college football. I'm not saying it because you've been nice enough to take some time. I'm saying it because it's an indisputable fact. So, because I got so many football questions, but maybe you can boil it down to a minute or two, if possible, about how this magazine comes together when all is said and done.
Yeah, we spend 7 months on it during I start the Sunday after Thanksgiving and go all the way through the first week of June. We had to wait till the transfer portal was closed, gave it 5 weeks after the portal was closed to capture where all the players landed. I did talk to about 125 of the 136 head coaches, spent about an hour with each one going over their teams. So it's a long, exhaustive process putting this thing out, but it's well worth the effort. 360 pages this year. I like to feel it's like getting 136 media guides rolled into one.
100%, 100%. So there you go. Starts the Thursday after Thanksgiving, or the day after Thanksgiving, week after Thanksgiving, until the second portal window closes in May. Full speed ahead. So speaking of full speed ahead, we're recording here about 10 days or so before week 0 kicks off, but we're also recording right around the time of the AP poll being dropped shortly thereafter, the coaches poll a week ago. I would ask you, I know everything is subjective and, one voter will feel differently than the other, but who do you believe right now going into the season? And you can take this in any direction you want. The team with the highest upside. Who do you believe right now? Like if Phil Steele, and maybe you do vote in the AP poll, if you can share. I don't even know if you can share, but basically, best team right now that you believe heading into college football in 2025 is.
And for the first time in the 31 years of the magazine, I'm going to say that team's Penn State, and
Wow.
they have a lot going for them that the last two national champs both had, which is a ton of players turned down the NFL, opted to return for their senior seasons. They only lost 5 players the NFL draft, and of all the top teams last year, they're one of the very few that has an experienced starting quarterback in Drew Aller. They also have my number one set of running backs in the country, number one offensive line. Their defense was outstanding last year, and they returned guys like Dennis Sutton and Zane Duran up front, A.J. Harris and Zakee Wheatley in the secondary. So a top-notch defense, top-notch offense. Special teams are solid. And last year they got their playoff experience. I think this year they can take the next step and break through. First time in the 31 years of the magazine, I'm saying Penn State's number one.
Let me ask you this. Listen, we all know what the narratives are around that program and with James Franklin specifically. And I'm not saying anything negative that isn't just factually correct. Is that, I believe the stat I saw 1-18 against top 5 teams in his time. And understandably, when you're playing a top 5 team, it means you're
Right.
playing the best of the best. But how do you balance when you do your rankings, history, context, as opposed to just what you see on a too deep or a depth chart when you start breaking teams down?
Yeah, you have to balance all of that. But then again, I mean, you go back a couple of years ago, Jim Harbaugh had 2 playoff appearences and 2 playoff losses, then all of a sudden won the national title. Ryan Day hadn't won national title. Now has won one. And you'll see guys, remember when Kirby Smart broke through for the first time and got past Nick Saban and won the national title. So I think you have to look at the talent that a team has, and that generally is going to be my overriding factor. But like I said, I like the fact Penn State got playoff experience last year.
A team, and I don't want to give away all your rankings, but looking at the AP poll that came out again just a day or two before we are speaking here, I think you might be a little higher. Notre Dame's ranked 6, so I don't want to sit here and pretend like, oh my goodness, they're grossly misevaluated, but I think you may have them a little higher, and curious on your perspective why.
That was Notre Dame?
Notre Dame, correct, yeah.
Yeah, with Notre Dame, I think you have to. Now, they do have a new quarterback in C.J. Carr, but I think you look at the rest of the roster. You've got Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price at running back. You look at the receivers with Greathouse, who I thought emerged late last year. Offensive line's one of the best in the country, and each of the 3 units on defense rank in my top 5 units defensively. So this is a very strong team. And while they have a new quarterback, they've got good surrounding talent around them. Notre Dame's actually going to be favored in all 12 games. I think their toughest 2 games at Miami of Florida in the opener, Texas A&M in week 2. Other than that, that should be a good favorite in the rest of them. And I also like the fact they gained the playoff experience last year. And here's the thing. You look at that national title game, they were down their top defensive lineman, top offensive lineman, and Jeremiah Love was not 100% healthy for the championship game. Had those 3 not got injured during the playoffs, they might have even given Ohio State a better game.
That's a fascinating thought here. You forget how banged up they were by the end of last season. Let me ask you this. I'm just curious. This isn't even necessarily a Notre Dame or Penn State question, but you mentioned the transfer portal and the impact that it has across college football now, both in talking to coaches and then also in your own evaluations. How do you balance, names on paper versus how they'll fit? And the only reason I bring it up is because, knowing the people that I know in this business and, 10x, 50x, 100x that I do. But, I think everybody can look at a guy on film, but this isn't a 3, 4, 5 year recruiting process like it might be for a high school player. It's not. It could be a 2-3 day recruiting process. And a lot of times you just don't know until you get kids on campus. And especially with the second portal cycle, sometimes now players that you're going to need to step up aren't even getting to campus until May or June. Again, I'd be curious, one, for your perspective on how the portal has changed your evaluation process, what coaches say about how to handle expectations. I don't even know necessarily exactly what I'm looking for here, but I just find it this fascinating twist of the guys that are stepping into starting spots now often are not guys that you've had in the program 2-3 years as a head coach that you really know well.
Yeah, those are all great questions, Aaron, and I'll answer the majority of them for you. First of all, let me start out by telling you how crazy this transfer portal is getting. I was talking to Coach Tim Beck at Coastal Carolina. I'm like, well, Coach, year 2, you had 68 new players last year. Now at least we're in year 3. Things are settling down. Huh? He's like, Phil, this year we have 69 new players. And he goes, our approach this year is to try to simplify the offense and simplify the defense so we can get players, because we know we're going to lose players like Coastal Carolina did. They lost a ton to the P-Feller schools that come in and take their best players. He says it's going to happen every year. So we have to change what we do. And I thought that was fascinating. The other thing is I did a blog on philsteele.com about homegrown talent. And I really feel the teams that focus on homegrown talent and not transfers are going to have success. There's more of a team atmosphere. You go back to Florida State, for example, last year. I thought that Norvell did a great job in 22 and 23 bringing in the portals. Last year, it was a portal-heavy team once again. And once things started to go south, maybe there wasn't that team atmosphere around. Maybe it was a bunch of one-year mercenaries there, and all of a sudden what had been 12-0 turned into 2-10, and it was a complete disaster. So the homegrown talent, much like Ohio State last year, yes, they brought in some key transfers, but the majority of the team was recruited as freshmen, much like Michigan the previous year, much like Penn State this year. It's freshmen that are now seniors on this squad, and I think you're going to see teams like that. Army and Navy had very good seasons last year, unexpectedly good seasons. Iowa State is another homegrown team. So keep your eyes on the teams that are not hitting the portal heavy every year. I think you'll see better team continuity.
Very good. Let's keep it going. I've seen you say in other interviews you believe Oklahoma is one of, if not the most undervalued teams. I think a lot of people listening kind of maybe know a little bit of the context there, but would be curious what it is about Oklahoma that has you so excited.
Yeah, and it was first of all, they've got the defense. Last year they held opponents to 87 yards per game below their season average, number 6 in the country. The majority of the defense is back. Offense was their problem last year. They had 0 returning starters on the offensive line. This year they have a veteran offensive line, and Bill Benba, one of the best offensive line coaches out there. The receiving corps was banged up last year. At one point they were down their top 5 receivers due to injury. Well, they get those injured players back, and they add some transfers. And I'll bring Clemson into the equation there. 2 years ago, Cade Klubnik was much maligned. He had 19 touchdowns, 9 interceptions because he had lost his top 3 receivers prior to the season. Well, last year he got those injured players back. They added to the mix. All of a sudden, he had 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I see the same thing with Oklahoma. The receiving corps goes from below average to a strength this year. They add in Jade Knott at running back from Cal, who I thought was the best running back in the Pac-12 2 years ago. And they also add in John Mateer from Washington State and Washington State's offensive coordinator. So now with an offense to go with that defense. And then last year, they only had 3 SEC home games. Well, this year, they only have 3 true SEC road games, with Texas being at a neutral site. So it's still a tough schedule, but a better schedule, much improved offense, outstanding defense, solid special teams. I see them as a potential playoff team, despite the fact they were 6-7 last year.
Let me ask you this. In your experience covering this sport, I know it's a relatively new phenomenon of new OC being able to bring his quarterback with him. I guess that Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley would probably qualify for that. But is there any data that show because I think the expectation is obviously, hey, John Mateer is going to be awesome because he played in this system, even if he's going from the Pac-12 / Pac-2 to the SEC. I'm just curious because you would know this better than anybody. Do we have any data yet on coaches that are able to bring a quarterback with them that already knows his system and the impact that can have at the next stop?
Yeah, and we could take a look at Western Kentucky as another one of those examples. 2 years ago, they brought in Bailey Zappi and his offensive coordinator. And all of a sudden, Bailey Zappi threw for nearly 6,000 yards that year. And he's actually going back to the well this year. He's bringing in Abilene Christian's offensive coordinator and Abilene Christian's quarterback. So he's trying to get lightning to strike twice. The brief history we have of this, I've seen good success. So I'm expecting the same for Oklahoma.
You mentioned potential playoff team. I'd just be curious, when you're either doing your rankings or I don't know if you make a formal playoff picks at any point, but how much do you factor in schedule? You say Oklahoma's schedule is easier than a year ago, still obviously very tough, as opposed to other schools in the SEC that aren't so tough. And, I'll just tell you, like from my perspective, as I'm looking at a 12-team playoff in the preseason this year, I'm looking at it a lot differently than a year ago, because I think a year ago is just, there's going to be 7 at-large bids. It's generally going to be the most talented teams. Then in Indiana, and I don't want to disrespect the talent that they had, but they got some schedule breaks along the way that I think we can all agree. Tennessee had an easier schedule than other teams in the SEC. It doesn't mean they didn't belong. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm looking more at schedules now than ever before, because as important as they've always been, it feels like they're more imbalanced than ever. So again, just a bigger picture college football question of when you're either doing your rankings, when you're making any projections for the season, how much do you factor in schedules?
It's huge. Look at my SEC forecast, for example. Last year, Georgia came in number 1 in the country in the preseason, but they had to play their 3 toughest opponents on the road: Alabama, Mississippi, Texas. Heck, they lost 2 of those games. Well, this year, their 3 toughest opponents, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, all have to travel to Georgia, and they haven't lost a game between the hedges this decade. Wow. It's been 6 years since they've lost a home game. So I think the schedule sets them up very well. That's why I picked them at the top of the SEC. And then look at the Big 12. Now, Big 12, I can make a case for any of 8 teams getting to and winning the Big 12 title. But I went with schedule. And you look at Arizona State, for example, the defending champ. This year they have to play Baylor on the road, Utah on the road, Iowa State on the road. So it's 3 really tough road games against the premier team. Same thing with Texas Tech. Best team money can buy under Joey McGuire this year, but they have to play Utah on the road, Arizona State on the road, Kansas State on the road. Remember what happened to Georgia last year? And Joey McGuire's 15-5 at home, but just 6-10 on the road. You look at Baylor, for example, the team I picked atop the Big 12. Their road games are Oklahoma State, Cincinnati, Arizona, 3 teams that had losing records last year. They get their toughest opponents at home. Same thing with Utah. Same thing with Iowa State. That's why that's the reason that I picked the Big 12 in the order is schedule.
Very good. Couple questions. We'll get you out of here. You mentioned the Big 12. By the way, any other teams that you feel are being totally undervalued this preseason outside of Oklahoma that you could share?
I'd say other surprise teams would be Texas A&M, which has a legitimate shot. And remember, Texas A&M was actually playing Texas in the season final for a shot at the SEC title game last year. And then Illinois. I know Illinois finished 10-3, but they didn't blow me away last year. This year, they've got the talent. They're number 3 on my experience chart. They do have to play Indiana on the road, but I think that's winnable. They have to play Ohio State at home. But guess what? Last year in the 7th game of the season, they took on defending national champ Michigan and beat them at home. This year, they're taking on the defending national champ Ohio State. Both teams lost 14 or 15 players to the NFL. Illinois got practically their whole team back from last year. Could be a potential upset there. Other than that, it's a very manageable schedule, so watch out for Illinois.
A couple more teams. We'll get you out of here. Team that I'm higher on, and I don't, again, top 10 in the polls. I think Bama's going to be really good. And I know, like me, like everyone in this business, I'm sure you have people not just in the program, but around the program. Everybody that I talk to, like, I think it sounds crazy, and it sounds like the cliche thing to say, but think there is a legitimate chip on their shoulder. 9-4 last year. You lose in the bowl game. What do you expect from Alabama this year going into year 2 of Kalen DeBoer?
Oh, I think they're a legitimate national title contender this year. You go back to last year, Nick Saban, there's probably your Saban guys, your DeBoer guys, and I don't know if we had a complete team. This year, when the portal opened up, guess what? Everybody stayed. That means they're bought in. I love that. All their units rank in my top 10 in the front of the magazine, with the exception of quarterback. But I like what Ty Simpson did at the Manning passing camp. He's got experience. He was my number 3 rated quarterback coming out of high school. He's probably a better fit for this offense than Jalen Milroe was. They had an offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb. So Simpson doesn't have to go out and win them games. I mean, they've got the rest of the teams loaded with NFL talent. And Kalen DeBoer, I think, took a less talented Washington team all the way to the national championship game in his second year there. It's his second year here. The team's bought in. I love Bama this year.
How about Colorado? 9 regular season wins last year. Yes, they lose the Heisman Trophy winner. I don't think people realize, you can give the stats, but the defense was much better than people remember. They return more than I think a lot of people realize. What do you expect from Colorado this year?
I think they're key pieces. Losing Travis Hunter, losing Shadur Sanders, losing some of the big players that they had. It's going to be tough to replace. Now, almost all their units do rank in my top units. And I like what you brought up about the defense. They did have an underrated defense last year, because when you talked Oklahoma, you talked Shadur, you talked Travis Hunter. You didn't really talk about the defense, but it was solid. I do like them up front defensively, but they're playing a tough Big 12 schedule this year, so I think there'll be a step back for the Buffaloes.
We've talked about a lot of teams that we think are undervalued: Oklahoma, Alabama, etc. Penn State, not undervalued, but just talented. Give me one team that you kind of believe is overvalued this year.
And it's not so much that they're overvalued, but they play a tough schedule. And I think when most people look at a team, they look at the quarterback, and South Carolina's got their Superman back in Lenora Sellers, but they lose 6 of their top 7 players off the defensive front 7. And really, the defensive front 7 was the reason South Carolina was nearly a playoff team last year. That's going to hurt. And then look at that schedule: at Missouri, at LSU, at Mississippi, at Texas A&M. And that doesn't even include home games against Bama, Clemson, Oklahoma, and a neutral site game against Virginia Tech. That's a brutal schedule South Carolina's going to come through. And I don't think their defense will be as dominant as last year.
Last one. I've had you on, as I said before, and no way you would remember this, but I am a UConn alum. I think it's easy to forget Jim Mora, Huskies coming off a 9-win season. By the way, this will be a fun fact forever. The Bill Belichick era at North Carolina technically began with a Fenway Bowl loss to the Huskies. Belichick wasn't in the building for that, but he had already accepted the job. So anyway, you can use that at your next cocktail party, Phil, if you want. No pressure. What do we think of Jim Mora's squad this year? Because floor is yours. What do you think of Jim Mora's squad?
I love it. I think that they've got a chance of getting back to last year's 9-win total, maybe even exceeding it. Fagnano at the quarterback spot is outstanding. They got Cam Edwards at running back. Love the defense. Donovan Branch is an NFL player at the outside linebacker spot. And when you look at the schedule this year, you're going to have an underdog at Syracuse. I thought Syracuse was the better team when they played them last year. Perhaps at Boston College, but there's some toss-up games at Buffalo, home against Duke, home against Air Force. Anybody takes this Connecticut team lightly. Jim Mora is going to have them be sorry for that. I think Connecticut's got a shot at matching or even topping last year's 9-win total.
Fantastic. Phil Steele, as you said, all of August doing radio interviews, media availability. So I don't want to take up any more of your time, because I'm sure you're booked, not only for the rest of the day, but the rest of the month into September. Really quickly, I think everybody listening knows more where they can find out more information about the magazine, but I want to give you the floor to promote it in any way that's going to help you out a little bit.
Hey, I appreciate that. Now, if you're out and about looking for it, it's 360 pages, like getting 136 media guides rolled into one. It's only available at Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. Those are the only 2 locations, brick and mortar. You can order it online at philsteele.com. When you do that, I charge you a shipping charge, but we give you the digital magazine absolutely free, and that's philsteele.com. We also this year have an FCS magazine with 2 full pages on every FCS team. That's available at philsteele.com, digital only, and we have a digital-only NFL magazine with 4 NFL pages on each NFL team. So Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, or philsteele.com.
And correct me if I'm wrong, with the digital copy, I don't think anybody's adding players in the portal at this point, but like you'll if something super newsworthy in terms of addition or loss happens, you'll update it in real time. Am I crazy in saying that?
That is absolutely true. We update the digital magazine all the way through the start of September. So we'll circle players that are out for the year, add Jake Retzlaff over to Tulane from BYU. We'll get all that taken care of in the digital version.
All right. Phil Steele of philsteele.com and the Phil Steele magazine. I know you got interviews all day and all month, but we appreciate you making a little bit of time. We will speak soon, my friend. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Great talking to you again, my friend.
All right. Thank you, Phil.